Hello family, welcome to our channel. If you traverse through rural China, you're likely to come across one or two black Chinese. These are descendants of Africans who were brought to China through the Arab trade. Over the years, they've been forgotten, intermarried and marginalized, an aspect that has reduced their numbers significantly. Today, we will learn how they came to China and some of the challenges they have faced in an attempt to have a sense of belonging. Before we start, please take a few seconds and subscribe to this channel for more of African insights. Africa and China have been connected for more than a millennium. Some scholars suggest that contact began as early as the 4th century AD, but solid evidence is scarce until the Tang Dynasty, 618 AD to 907 AD. During this period, trade flourished between China and the city-states of East Africa. This trade was largely facilitated by Arab merchants who brought African slaves to China as part of their extensive maritime trade network. The Tang Dynasty marks the beginning of documented interactions between Africans and Chinese. Arab traders introduced African slaves known as Kunlun to China. These individuals were initially viewed through a lens of exoticism, often perceived as lower class, ignorant, and even dangerous. However, over time, Chinese perceptions of the Kunlun evolved. They began to appear in Tang-era stories as heroic, resourceful figures, although still seen as culturally foreign. African slavery in China reached its peak during the Tang and Song dynasties. While exact numbers are unclear, it is known that these African slaves primarily lived in Canton province. By the Song dynasty, 960 AD to 1279 AD, the Kunlun were often viewed as displaced people struggling to adapt to Chinese society. Despite this, there were instances of respect and honor towards free Africans. For example, in 1071, an East African merchant named Zheng He arrived in China and was received with great honor by Emperor Shenzong, earning the title Lord Guardian of Prosperity. The Yuan dynasty, 1271 AD to 1368 AD, saw expanded contact with Africans through trade and diplomatic missions, particularly with Madagascar. Moroccan traders also visited China during this period, enhancing the cultural exchange between these regions. Under the Ming dynasty, 1368 AD to 1644 AD, trade between China and East African city-states like Mogadishu, Malindi, and Kilwa flourished. Admiral Zheng He, one of China's most famous navigators, led expeditions to East Africa, bringing back valuable goods such as ivory, rhinoceros horn, and exotic animals. His voyages, starting in 1416, marked the first direct official contact with East African states, solidifying diplomatic and trade relationships. The rise of European colonialism in the 17th and 18th centuries marginalized Chinese-African interactions. Both regions turned their focus towards Europe and the West for trade and political alliances. Despite this shift, trading connections between China and East Africa persisted, albeit with less prominence. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, the relationship between Africa and China began to regain importance. Commodities such as herbs, spices, and precious goods facilitated renewed trade connections. Additionally, African Americans started to develop their own connections with China. The Boxer Rebellion, 1899 to 1901, marked the first significant African American contact with modern China. African American soldiers from the 10th Cavalry, known as Buffalo Soldiers, were part of the international force that intervened in the conflict. Later, during World War II, African American soldiers played a crucial role in the construction of the Ledo Road, a supply route through the Himalayas connecting India and China. Relations between Chinese and African American soldiers were generally positive during this period. In the interwar period, African American jazz musicians found a welcoming audience in Chinese coastal cities like Shanghai. Figures such as the Earl Whaley Band gained prominence, contributing to the cultural exchange between African Americans and Chinese. Prominent African American intellectuals and activists also visited China. Langston Hughes toured China in 1934, and Webb Du Bois visited multiple times, meeting Communist Party leaders, including Mao Zedong. These visits were part of a broader pattern of African Americans engaging with China, particularly those involved in radical political movements. In the 1960s and early 1970s, members of the Black Panther Party, including Huey P. Newton and Elaine Brown, made political pilgrimages to Beijing. The 1960s saw China actively recruiting African students to its universities as part of its bid for support among Third World nations. This influx led to tensions and protests, as many Chinese students resented the preferential treatment given to African students. The most significant incident occurred in 1988 at Hohai University in Nanjing, where a confrontation between African and Chinese students escalated into a violent clash. Despite these tensions, the number of Africans in China continued to grow. By 2014, approximately 500,000 Africans, Afro-Caribbeans and African Americans lived in China. Most Africans were concentrated in Guangzhou, a major trading hub often referred to as Chocolate City. Nigerian traders formed the largest group, followed by individuals from Senegal, Mali, Guinea and Ghana. These traders engaged in the import-export business, purchasing textiles and consumer goods in Guangzhou to sell in their home countries. A smaller but significant African community also developed in Yiwu, Zhejiang province, known for its large commodities trading market. Ethiopians and Sudanese were among the first to settle in Yiwu, where they established a more permanent community centered around churches and a mosque. Since the 1980s, a growing number of African Americans have visited, studied and sometimes settled in China. Prominent figures like Langston Hughes and Webb Du Bois paved the way for a new generation of African American travelers. While experiences have been mixed, many African Americans have found opportunities in business, teaching and trading in major cities like Beijing and Shanghai. However, challenges remain, particularly in rural areas where stereotypes and racial prejudices persist. Language barriers also pose significant difficulties, even in urban centers. Despite these obstacles, African Americans continue to forge connections with China, contributing to a more diverse and dynamic cultural landscape. The history of Black Chinese is a testament to the enduring and evolving relationship between Africa, African Americans and China. From early trade and migration to modern-day interactions, this history is rich with stories of cultural exchange, mutual respect and occasional tension. As China continues to open up to the world, there is potential for deeper understanding and stronger ties between people of African descent and the Chinese population. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of Black Chinese. If you found this video informative, please like, share and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from around the world. Until next time, stay curious.